Hello, Tom Lebecki here with the latest edition of the Armchair NBA. I'm feeling a lot better. Thank you, everyone, for the well wishes. If you haven't seen it, please check out my interview with the Sammy the Bull. Also did a great interview with Anthony Caiucci of Mafia Made and Carlos, and just recently rounded out with 36 Rules of Mafia Bosses with RJ Roger of Black Can Print Mafia. Shout out to RJ. Today's guest is no less special. If anything, is a great guy, a friend of the show, Jeff Nadu. Welcome to the Armchair NBA. How you doing today, buddy?
Good to see you, Tom. You look a lot better. You sound a lot better. I want to shout you out. You've done some great interviews lately. I got to tell you, and I told you this, I thought your way of interviewing Sammy was really good. It kind of went to a different way of kind of the same stories. You talked about it more from a business standpoint. I thought it was great. And RJ Rogers, a friend of mine, we get drinks all the time. He lives very close to me. He's a great guy. It was a great interview. You're really knocking it out of the park lately, man.
I appreciate that. And then we'll probably do like an unpacking of the Sammy interview. What happened was when I interviewed him, it was January 11th. We both happened to have COVID. I had a 2-week battle, getting my bearings. But we'll do an unpacking, that type of stuff. I don't mind doing live. We can do like an unpacking episode, watch it together. Love to have you on, get your assessment. I know some people were critical of it, but the truth of the matter is, Armchair NBA is looking at true crime, Cosa Nostra, and business and tying that in. And I was really interested in to see. I mean, he was a number 2 guy in a $500 million organization. I wanted to see what his thoughts were as a gangster, but also a guy running the show. You know what I mean, Jeff?
Yeah, I had to come kind of take some hard looks at my own content and say to myself, what do I want to do in this? What is my goal in all of this? And I've looked at some of the people like yourself and RJ and OC Shorts and even my friend Scott Bernstein and where they are and what they've done. And the important thing is, while I may not agree with the decisions these individuals make, I ultimately realize and have gotten to the point where I still realize that they're part of this game,
Yeah.
and I think you have to sometimes leave your personal opinions out of it. And sometimes I think it's just me being young and I always want to include my personal opinion. But at the end of the day, most of the guys that are doing this and succeeding at it, it's all about just reporting facts. I did a video quickly recently on Gene Borello.
Yeah.
And I got the typical, well, why are you putting this guy out there? And I said, look, I think he's an interesting character. I think he's a guy that I'm going to tell the story about. Whether it's good or bad, I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. I think for me, I've kind of learned it's just about telling stories. People want to hear this stuff. And, you're not always going to get people that love what you're doing, but, I'm glad you were doing it. And that was a cool interview. You don't see those sort of things a lot of the time. And it was definitely a lot different than the norm.
Well, I can tell you this. I mean, listen, and we'll get into how you start your channel, why your channel. We'll get to that in a second, but this is germane to the conversation. I had Gene on. I did it Mother's Day of I think 2019, and it's one of my best shows in terms of I thought it was great content. In terms of the views, I think it ranks like number 4 or 5, and I've done a lot of interviews, a lot of good interviews. So people do have an interest in Gene. Respectfully, I think things got diluted for him a little bit. You kind of had like Panisi come on the scene, which was an inducted member, so a little bit of different dynamic. Maybe more recent than Gene. Not that a lot of people trust him. You had Frank Pasqua, so you had like kind of some other people kind of come out or more vocal after Gene. That I felt like Gene was a go-to guy to me up to like 15. Just my humble opinion. If you were in like Queens. And then, Panisi kind of came around, and I think he's a go-to guy up to 18. Frank Pasqua, I don't put a lot of respect, a lot of stock into what he says. I think we push back as definitely debunking a lot of what he said. But I think Gene has the right place. He represents a really powerful crew, Vinny Asaro, Ronnie G. I mean, these are some really serious people. So I got to check that out. I haven't seen it yet. I'll check it out. But
I think you're totally right, Tom. And I got some pushback for what I said about Gene. Like I said, I don't know Gene. I've never spoke to him in my life. I read some of his book. I was interested because, again, he is one of those, this is like the last 10 years. This is not the 80s, right?
Correct.
I've said before, and I'll say this again. And I think if you know Gene or you know anything about Gene if he were around in the 80s or 80, 85, that area,
Yeah.
he'd have been one of these people we talk about, these nutty guys that were out there doing stuff in the streets. And, he came up, he had the right bloodlines, and they ended up cooperating. Doesn't defeat the fact that he wasn't around Vinny Asaro and Ronnie G. Alonso, who are both high-end guys, as you said.
Exactly. So for those that are watching, and a lot of folks, and Jesus, if I had $1 every time I got asked, I want to start a YouTube channel. I'm thinking of starting a YouTube channel. I'm starting a YouTube channel. So let's first start off with the how. Okay. We'll get to the well. Actually, let's start with the why. So the first question is, you got to ask yourself, why do you want to start a YouTube channel or a podcast? So Jeff, when people ask you, hey, why should I, or if you ask them what's a good answer for the why people should start a YouTube channel?
Well, I think that would be the first question I would say. Like, what are you doing? What's your purpose? Do you have an idea of what you want to talk about? I think sometimes people just think, okay, I'll start a show, I'll turn a camera on, and I'll just talk. Some people can do that. You run out of things after a while though to talk about, and there's a lot of things called dead air that you don't want. I started my channel. I have 2 YouTube channels. One I started originally for sports betting. I built it up over the years. I don't use it as much because I've just started working for companies and things like that. But when I started my Mafia YouTube, it was a complement to the podcast that I have, because I feel like when you get into media, you have to have your product everywhere, whether it's Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, iTunes, wherever, right? You have to have that, because there's different fan bases everywhere. Some people don't know podcasts exist. They only watch YouTube. So when I first created it, that was the goal. It was to create a short video kind of thing that I could complement my show with. And I think sometimes people don't necessarily ask themselves that question. And then by the 5 videos in, they're thinking, well, I'm not really getting the response I want, and I'm just going to stop doing it. It's hard to do content when you don't really know what you're going to talk about. You have to have some idea. So that's the great thing. You have to ask yourself, why am I doing YouTube? What's my goal with it? What am I going to get out of it in a year or 2 years? What's my main end game for it?
Yeah, and you got to also be real about it. So there's different types of types of shows. And I'm just gonna use a mob genre for example. So you kind of have the first party guys. You have Mike Francis, Bobby Louisi, John Panisi, and the like, right? So these are people in the life, so they could just share stories.
Right.
They could do a monologue. They could have a guest on. So they can carry the show themselves, or they cannot, right? Then you got guys like us that are second party guys that you on your show do more stories, historical. That would fall more in line with OC Shorts, a Mooney Dash Cam, and the like, right? So those are people who are saying, you know what, hey, I'm not, a mobster, but I know enough to be dangerous. I'm well researched. I'm going to present this information. The third type of show is kind of my show. Is I tend to I'm inquisitive. I like to get it from the horse's mouth if possible. So I tend to have guests on, really deep dive with guests. The only time I ever do a monologue is when it's something I'm an expert in. I kind of did how to get passive income, 6 side hustles. But for the most part, maybe do occasional live. But for the most part, I do rely on guests. The reason why I personally like to rely on guests is they're the subject matter expert, right? How much better are you going to get Cosa Nostra in the 80s from Sammy the Bull, from Mike Francis, hear about the Philly Boston Mob from Bobby Louisi, hearing about the Lucchese's from John Panisi. Like, I can't do that justice, Now you get some pushback. They say, hey, you platform, informants and that kind of stuff. Listen, the truth of the matter is these people did what they did. I tend to be more forgiving. I think people change in life. And I try to do my best to report it. Now, I'm not afraid personally to have somebody on that is against what they say afterwards, and I've done that all the time. So those are
and you could also, Tom, interview an author.
Yeah, correct.
Someone in journalism, Larry McShane. I spoke
law enforcement.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, so it's not just and I want to go into this. So now we'll get into the how to start it, right? So obviously YouTube is very easy to set up. You put a banner in, you come up with a name, maybe have a little bit of artwork done, meaning that's what you put in on the channel, maybe a little logo. But just be aware that if you have a new channel and has a lot of subs, they're going to limit your time that you could post. I think it limits it to 15 minutes. And then there's a live to go live. You can only go live from your desktop, not mobile. I think you need 1,000 subs for that. And then monetization, you need 4,000 hours of watch time and 1,000 subs. If you ever notice, people will do a lot of lives like every night when they're not monetized because they're trying to rack up the hours. So it does go by. The nice thing about it is it goes by individual viewer an hour, meaning if Jeff and I watch a show for an hour, that counts as 2 hours towards watch time, not 4,000 elapsed. It means how many people watched it. So what are some tips from your perspective, Jeff, for how to start the channel? We identify the why. Let's talk about the how.
Well, you should have 5 things planned out that you're going to talk about, 5 videos. Okay.
Yeah.
The consistent key to content. Okay. And again, whether you love me or hate me, I've done this for over a decade. Okay. You got to put content out. Got to sit here and do videos. Okay. But you don't want to do too many videos where you're oversaturating yourself, where you're doing 3, 4 lives a day.
Correct.
2, 3 videos a week, right? Keep your viewers engaged. Whenever I do a video on anything, whether it's sports betting, whether it's, basketball, whether it's mafia stuff, I want you to learn something when you watch my video. Some of the topics I talk about, maybe you know something about, but I want to tell you something that you didn't know. I have a purpose for the video that I'm putting out, and I want to engage you. I want to tell you every time you watch me, please hit the like button. Make sure you subscribe. That's how you build it. It's not going to happen overnight. I've said before, and I've told RJ this, we've talked about it. I think I mentioned it to you. Yeah. I think YouTube's a really tough audience to build because so let's say I went on Twitter or something like that. On YouTube, there's not a way to remind people to watch what you're doing, right? So like I can't retweet a video that I put out 3 weeks ago that I could do on Twitter and make people see it again. When you put a video out, you hope that it gets noticed. And the goal of any video I put up now, Tom, is my goal is to get it into the algorithm, because when it gets into the algorithm, it goes into the suggested videos, all that sort of thing. So just the nuts and bolts, you have to just put some content out, make it look somewhat professional. It doesn't have to look like yours looks super professional. For me, I have a rapper and an athlete, and I sit here with my hair not done, and I just tell you a story and I engage you. But content, that's the biggest thing.
You know what it is, Jeff? And this was prior to me getting sick, and then after. I was very willy-nilly. I didn't have a great background. My sound might have been off a little bit. I kind of wore whatever. And I'm not saying for people that do that are wrong. What happened was I had Sammy on. I'm like, you know what? Let me dress up out of respect for him and have him on. But then I'm like, you know what? I think Jeff deserves the same amount of respect that Sammy has, that RJ got, that Anthony Caiucci get. So I'm now stepping it up a little bit on the dress. It was so funny. One of the commenters on one of the other creator channels, and by the way, I'm out of the business of knocking any creators. I'm not going to even mention any other creators negatively. But one of them was like, "Oh my God, Tom wore a really cheap jacket for the show." Now, if they looked for the jacket I was wearing, it had a workable button. So if they know a little bit about men's custom clothing, it was a workable. So it's like you can't win, right? So let's talk about how to grow your channel.
You can't win. Okay? You're right about that.
So and I think is one thing is have a thick skin, because you'd be surprised. People came up with documents that I was bankrupt. There was another Tom Levecchia, people talking about my family have gotten threatened. You need a thick skin for this business.
Yeah.
So Jeff, you set up your channel, you're ready to rock. What are some tips on how to grow your channel?
Yeah, so like I started my channel in late July. I think it was July 29th I started it.
Oh,
and
nice.
It took a little bit of time. I was getting some views, maybe 300, 400, 500, 600 views. And I remember starting it when I put the videos out. The only videos I was putting out was I was taking my podcast, right? I was just grabbing it and putting it on YouTube. I didn't care about the titling. I didn't care about anything. I wasn't getting any views. And then I started saying, you know what? I wanted to start doing these short videos on different gangsters, short videos, 8-10 minutes long. Yeah. And I started doing them, started getting a few more views, including certain names in my titles, doing deep dives into the high-end capos and things like that. Yeah. And then I got to a point about a month and a half ago where I said, you know what? I'm going to go consult with some people that I knew at Barstool, some social media people, and kind of just say to them, hey, how can I grow a YouTube? Because I have this podcast, that has a lot of viewers. How can I
Yeah.
get them to come over and watch YouTube?
Yeah.
And the two things I'd recommend is, luckily, unlike most of the people in this space, I have different avenues to push and promote a YouTube channel. I can talk about it on a pod. I can ask you to subscribe in every video. But the biggest thing on how to grow is just simple things. Going into the back end of YouTube, and I was told about this through other content creators and people there, that there's hashtags you can include. So,
Correct.
like, if someone searches Al Capone, you know, it's
Yes,
going to show your video.
correct. Correct.
You know, titling a video, making the channel title stand out, putting
Yes.
the right thumbnails into things.
Yes.
There's a video, Tom, I have, okay, and I'm not afraid to talk about it either.
Yeah.
It's titled "The Forgotten Porn King of the Mafia."
Oh, wow.
And it's about this individual, Michael Zaffarano, Bonanno crime family. He ran Times Square, okay,
Yeah.
back in the 70s. And so I started throwing hashtags in, and I included like porn, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Put the video out. It was my first one that ran. It got like 11,000 views.
Wow.
And I go in and look at my analytics, and I was thinking, like, how did people find this video? And Tom, like 3,000 people saw it because they typed porn into the search bar. And again, like, you have to use titling. This is how all YouTube channels do it.
Titling is a growth hack, correct?
Yeah, you got to use it the right way. You have to get someone that, and this is why I think for me, I've been able to grow the channel quickly, is because when someone sees my video, they have a beginning, a middle, and an end to the video, and they can learn something, and they can see that it's something interesting.
Arc for those that never see what I try to do in an interview, or good interviewers will always have an arc, beginning, kind of the peak, either downfall or the ending up.
Yeah. And all the content I do has a beginning, a middle, and an end, because I don't want to leave you a cliffhanger where you have to come back for next week. Like, that works in true crime and certain other things where you're telling a long story. But for me, I want you to, I look at it like a depot. I want you to go in, get what you want, have all you need there, get it, do what you got to do, and leave. Like, that's what I want out of it. Quick, easy, concise, and to the point.
Yeah.
We learn something, but by finding the video, I want you to see it on the side and say, wow, the Forgotten Porn King of Mafia. That's interesting. I love women or men, and I love the mafia. You know, I want you to be drawn in by my product, and you are happy when you leave and you say, you know what? That was really cool. I'm going to hit the subscribe.
Yeah.
That's the goal. Now, the common thought is huge growth. He must be buying subscribers. Okay. And here's how you can tell if somebody is buying subs or not.
Yeah. You may wait.
Right. You have to look at views. Okay. If someone has, let's say, 4,000 subs, okay, and they're only getting, let's say, 1,200 views, even 1,500 views, basically a fraction of what their sub base is.
Correct.
And they're not getting views on anything. They're just keep going up. That's a sign. Now, if you have a channel that has, let's say, 3,000 subs and they're getting 12, 17, 27.
Yeah.
If you're buying subs, how are you getting views? Oh, are you buying views too? You know, the analytics stuff don't lie.
Well, there's some ratios that I want to point out for those people that I'm not going to throw shade at anybody, but I'm a digital marketer and I could know in 3 seconds if somebody's buying subs. And it's not just an ethical thing. What happens is when you buy subs and it gets pushed out, you have a really great episode and it gets pushed out. Obviously, bots can't watch. Bot subs can't watch. So if less people watch it and have a good experience, it's not going to get pushed out to recommended. So what you want to see is this: when you have a channel, you want to see 15% of your views be representative of your sub. So for somebody like me, is when I launch it, it's funny, like, oh, you're not getting enough views, Tom. Well, if I have around 9,500 subs, I should only be getting 2,000 the first day, right? And if you do higher than that,
that should be your benchmark, right?
That is a benchmark. 15% of your subs should be within 24, 48 hours should be viewed. Now, if it's lower than that, it means what is called the CTR, click-through rate was lower. If it's higher than that, it's there's really three things. One is click-through rate, like the thumbnail, their title, they clicked through, so it got recommended. Number two, it has a very long watch time. So when you have a show, and we will probably come in at around the 30, 40-minute marks. I'm trying to shorten them for this reason. If you can watch a show and those initial people watch like 40 to 50% of it, it'll get pushed out further by the algorithm. They just want to keep you on Google. YouTube, Google owns YouTube. Google and YouTube just want to keep you on the platform. Why? They want you to watch ads. That's how they make their money. And they throw us a little bit in terms of monetization. The third thing to do in terms of metrics is if people like and share and comment, which is equal to engagement. Now, people are always like, well, what should the comments be? The working kind of ratio is 0.5 comments. So if you, for example, have 1,000 views, you should have about 5 comments. If you have 4,000 views, it should be about 20 comments. That's like the minimum benchmark. It should be better, obviously, but that's a minimum benchmark. What I think is weird, Jeff, is I'll see somebody, and this is, you could tell you buy, they'll have like 2,500, 3,000 views, and then only 3 comments. A little tricky, you know?
Yeah, and that's another thing, I think some of the things you have to look for, and that's a great point. If you have a 5,000 video or 5,000 view video and you have 5 comments, 2 comments, I mean, the engagement's not there. It could be, pirated views or whatever. But yeah, I think to grow, you just have to do some little things, tinkering, understanding thumbnails, what catches the eye of someone. And I remember when I did that porn video, the Forgotten Porn King video, it was really a test to me.
Wait, you said when you filmed your porn video?
Yeah. I don't think you'd want to see that. But no, so yeah, it's testing and tinkering. But you're right. It's just engaging content, putting stuff out where my goal is to not only adhere and I want the people that follow me to value what I'm putting out, but I'm also almost in kind of like a job interview. I want to impress the people that don't know who I am. So let's say you type
awareness is critical, and an awareness is discovery. The best is when you do a great video. And really quick in the metrics in the back, right? You can see how many subs. That's why it's kind of funny, because I think I was just watching some of the shows. You had a really nice breakout, which is great. And in 3 seconds, I knew it was real. I'm going to tell you why. Your last 3 or 4 videos hit the algorithm nicely, and you got a lot more views than you normally do. The quickest way to get more subs is when you get a lot of views. It happens organically. So, for example, I think I had like 63,000 views on the Sammy video, and I picked up about 400 subs. A little less than 1%, 0.8-ish is about right. Maybe 1% stick. So the great way to get subs is by producing great content. All right.
Hey, Tom, real quick, let me say one other thing. When you look at any company out there, let's pick Comcast, for instance.
Yeah.
Comcast has a bevy of customers, okay?
Correct.
But who always gets the deals, Tom? New customers.
Yeah.
They know they have the normal customers, the ones that watch always. They want to get new people too. And that's the same thing here. I want to get you. I want you to be interested. I want you to keep coming back. And I'm also going to try to get those new people, with new videos, and hopefully they see it. So it's all about adhering and coming to everyone and saying, here's what I have. Hope you like it.
Now, I don't know if I worded this correctly, but what are some mistakes not to make in the beginning? We all make them. What are some of the common mistakes making when starting a channel?
Well, I would think just, I've always had to deal with this. This is something that I've always had to have personally. I'm not someone that takes advice well, but I think sometimes you have to realize there are people that are good at some of this, and just taking advice, colleagues and people that, like you, for instance, that have been in the business a while, and, people that I respect, and, just probably not trying to be the smartest guy in the room all the time. You can take advice, you could change things, you could change things up. And if you're not happy with what you're doing, your production, fix it. What's not working? And I know for me, what wasn't working was just throwing out and saying biography of John Gotti, putting more into that, putting a title, putting a picture, getting someone to maybe eye it. The goal that I have, Tom, in content is I want to get as many eyes on me as possible, going on other folks' shows, going and colleaguing with people. Be out there, be open to talking to anyone. Be open to talking about anything, not just fixating yourself on one subject. and caring about your audience, caring about finding new people, figuring out how to build it. Just putting every week that you're talking about this, hey, come talk. Like that doesn't draw me in to want to take a look at it. I don't have any interest. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
You know, I would
Well,
just say,
I think one of the biggest mistakes people make is there's a lot of hubris and egos, so they buy live streams. You could buy anything, or you can like do a live stream and you can purchase people that are bots that are part of the live and part of that number. You can buy views, you can buy premieres, you can buy engagement. There's a whole bunch you can do, and I'll tell you why. The reason why you shouldn't buy it, and it's not just ethical. What happens is when you buy views, it crushes your average watch time. So you'll get some views up front and it'll have great optics, but then that evergreen content or that content is probably not going to be seen ever again. So if you were getting 20 or 30 a day, you get some bots in there, you're probably going to do 1 or 2 per day. So you're going to wreck that video of views that you would have gotten later, and you would have gotten them for free and people that awareness. Number 2, it gets a little expensive when you start aggregating all these different purchases. So now you got to keep up. Got to keep buying,
right.
and chasing. And then it just looks weird, Jeff. Like, hey, I have 5,000 subs and I get 1,000 views. It's just weird, man. I don't know. I think it's incongruent. I think it could hurt your brand in the long run.
And it's always going to come out, at the end of the day. I've always said, if I'm ever like, if you can ever prove something, come and put the content out there and prove it, right? But I know for me in the long run, for me, I come on YouTube because I wanted to challenge myself because it's always been tough to build on YouTube. It's not easy. And I think when you hit on something, you just have to try to fix it and change it. And I changed things a couple of times, and I found a groove and started to kind of put stuff out as you did and everybody else does. And people start to fruitfully like it. So, you have to put content out. That's important. Just
I can tell you how I started, how I grew. I almost lost everything, and then it grew again. So this channel started as New Theory. I hand the reins over to Jason Venturelli. It was typically an audio podcast, and then I started getting some bigger guests. So I decided to start taping some of them. That was how it started. I think at that point had up to about 2,200 subs. I did hook up with John Panisi at the time, and again, so strategy is okay. You know what? You have a broad campaign. Maybe you have a partner, maybe somebody who's notable, and then you go niche. So at that point, we kind of went niche, went into the mafia genre, NBA Buttman. And the NBA Buttman brought us about 2,200 to about 8,000 subs. And this is where it gets interesting is John and I kind of disbanded. It's not a secret. We kind of disbanded pretty abruptly. We just had differences on the direction of the show, how it should have been promoted. We also did 100 shows together. So it kind of ran its course a little bit too. So at that point, lost 3%. Doesn't sound like a lot, but it is. Lost 3% of the subs in one day when we departed. There were just people that were unapologetically, I'm here for the mob stuff. I'm here for the made guy. I'm here for John Panisi. And I'll be transparent. I was always very deferential to John in a sense where I was the host, but he was the subject matter expert. So it was a rug pull. Lost 3% of the subs in one day, roughly around 250 subs. So then I literally quickly within a day rebranded to Armchair NBA, and then I worked my ass off. I think I did like 40 episodes in like 2.5 months. And not only did I capture the 250 back right away, but I got another 600 within the first 30 days. That's the other thing too. You got to experiment. So I thought naively, to be honest, Jeff, that when John was gone, I thought the channel was going to be gone.
Yeah, you didn't know what you were going to do,
right? But it turned out, and again, everybody has their moral constitution, and they're welcome to believe however they want. I was okay with having John on, but there was a lot of people uncomfortable with. They liked me, they liked the content, but they were uncomfortable with me having a co-host. I could have an informant on the show, but they were uncomfortable having a co-host being an informant. So I picked up literally a lot of folks that were like upfront, hey Tom, you know what? I'll mess with you. I'll F with you. You seem like a great guy. But I just couldn't roll with you before because I just don't align with who he was or what he did. And not just John, other type of informants as well. So for me, it turned out being that positive. Then I started to find my voice. And For those that are following the show, I pulled back on the lives. I just don't, not as much my jam. I like to do more interviews. I like to talk with great people like yourself. I'm a little selfish when it comes to the show, and I'll tell you why. I'm selfish in a sense where I want to learn something for me. I want to record it and share it with everybody else. So I think if it's of interest to me, it'll be interest to other people. So I'm selfish in a sense where I want to do topics that I care about personally, but that I also believe that the audience will like. And we're honing in on 10,000 subs.
One thing about you that I have a connection with is you're one of the only people that dip their toes a little bit into the mob tube stuff, right?
Yeah.
You know, and because some of the some of the content people that I talk with, OC and RJ, they never have really, right?
Yeah.
And it's really a question of where do you want your channel to go? And
Correct.
I've always connected with you because you did as well. You kind of dipped your foot in. You see, you know what? Let me try to enhance my show, maybe try to get some more views, things like that. And you messed around and you decided, you know what? I want to go another way.
Yeah.
You pivoted and went in another way.
A few times. I was gonna leave the mob genre completely. It's just I like it personally.
Yeah. You've always enjoyed it, yeah. And there's always a business connection to the mob, right? So you can kind of hit both. But not for me. Like, I don't just talk about the mafia. Like, I've done shows on, black organized crime. I'm going to do some Asian stuff. I have an interview, my highest rated show with a guy that was in prison. I try to include all of that stuff on the channel, and it's a challenge, but it's fun. It's engaging.
What's the biggest mistake you made to date? That you learned.
The biggest mistake I ever made was involving myself in other creators' content.
Got it.
I think sometimes you have to just worry about yourself, and that's not to say you shouldn't go on and interact with people that you enjoy, but I think you have to remember that at the end of the day, your channel is about you, and you have to come to bat, because eventually, like, you could play as a team, but eventually you're going to have to step up there and hit the ball on your own, and I just I think drama is tacky. I think it's a fad. I think ultimately it goes out. I've always, Tom, the last thing I'll say, I've always related this whole thing back to poker, right? There are poker players that every year you see them. They're there every year. They're always just
or Phil Ivey.
Phil Ivey, yeah. And then you have that guy that wins the WSOP every year. He wins one time, you never hear from him again. You hit luck for a couple of weeks or months, and then, like I've seen time and time again in sports and in this business, there's the guys that are hits for a little bit, but they phase out. The Scott Bernsteins, the Tony DeStefanos, they're all here, and I think info sells at the end of the day, and the drama and nonsense is just really a fad. And I think at the end of the day, you have to come with some concrete stuff, and people like that a lot more than just nonsense.
Why do you think there's a little bit of a divide? And I'll tell you why. I was talking to Ed Scarpo, actually, Cosa Nostra News. So you kind of have like the old guard, right? Jared BC, George Anastasia, Schwartweiser, I believe that was messed up his name. Cosa Nostra News, more traditional, medium, if you will. And then you have the whole swath of, mob tube, including first party people. I know Angel Gotti started the show, which is pretty interesting, being who she's his daughter, and then it's a whole bunch of mob tube kind of those, frankly, some of the more dramatic players in the space, but nevertheless, it's all in the same space and genre. So why has there not been as much of a crossover? It just seems like the newer guys don't respect. Like, I would have Jerry Capisi on. I had Larry McShane on. Granted, a little controversial, but
I had him too.
It just seems that there's some really great legacy people out there, but I believe some of the newer people either don't know or not acknowledging some of the OGs in the space,
Well, and I think it's also, that being said, I think it's also a divide between the older group, right?
Yeah.
Because, there are certain creators in that old group that you discussed that, they've thumbed their nose up at people like me. I've said before, there are certain authors I've been reading since I was a kid, and it was interesting. It'd be fascinating to speak to some of them, but I think there's a disconnect. The younger guys kind of think, what, I can do this on my own. I'm the technology guy. I can go and comb through stuff and find it. And the older guys are kind of, I don't want to be a part of that. I have my thing. It works. And I'm good where I'm at. For me, I'm kind of a bit older. I'm a little bit more experienced in media where, I'm willing to kind of, adhere to both. I've been around, the Mob 2 people, and I've also been around some of the people you mentioned. But I've noticed that the people that I think I align a little bit more with are the guys that have been around a little bit longer.
Well, that's what I want to ask you. So maybe give me 2 or 3 top shows that you're watching now in the genre.
Yeah, so I'll tell you right now, I think RJ,
Yeah,
I like you, Tom. I think he has kind of a different look on mafia history,
Yeah.
which you have like the business thing, which I find fascinating, right? Because business and money in the mafia are king. RJ does that philosophical look into
It's more academic.
Yeah, he's got the old school, like, one of the reasons I love the show Gomorrah so much, Tom, is that
Oh my God! Thank you for telling me about season 5. I'm episode 3. After we're done, I am zooming back to my HBO Max.
One of the things I love about the show so much is it involves those old school Italian things, right? The RJ tells me all the time about a quote from Saddam Hussein, of all people. And Saddam Hussein talks about the lion never gives attention to the monkey throwing stuff at him. He just lets him laugh, and eventually he knows that eventually he can eat him alive.
Correct.
RJ's very philosophical. He always has quotes. He always has proverbs and things. And I love that part. He loves going into the old essence of the mafia. He's one I love to watch. I'll admit, I love Dave Stratweiser's podcast, Philly.
I gotta do more on that. I haven't.
Yeah, I think for me, I think the one knock on Dave and George that I get from a lot of people is if you're not from Philly, I think it's very Philly based. So like Dave talks a lot with police officers, things like that. But for me, where I live, it's a perfect one. I love OC Shorts. I think he's just terrific, James. But yeah, I think there's and that guy Mooney Dashcams you mentioned.
I like him a lot.
And one thing I can't, and I've talked about this, Tom, one of the things that I can't bring that people like Mooney can bring, Angel Gotti, Joe Baith, Vinny Bracco, even you. I'm not in the mafia. I've never been in the mafia. I'm not from New York. All those people have grown up either around it or we're in those neighborhoods. We all have different things we can bring. So I'm just a purist of history, and I enjoy talking about it. So yeah, there's a lot of good content out there.
I like not that he does a lot of mob stuff these days, but Vinny Bracco, the Brooklyn guy, Bay 8th, good friend of mine, started his own show. What I like about him is you think he was in a deep dive into the mob stuff. He was going over baseball, the 1980s, some boxing matches. I'm feeling a little better, so I was able to go on once or twice. So I was happy to be honest. And it's interesting enough is when I was sick, I wasn't really in the mood to like just do anything, but I would just listen. And I still listen to the Bay 8 show. I still listen to Vinny's show. I still listen wherever you were, I'd follow you. And you just got to like really kind of find out who you like to listen to.
What I like about those guys, Tom, is I've seen a vibe change from them where they've kind of decided, you know what, I have my voice and I'm going to use it, and I'm going to take advice. Joe calls me all the time. I'm sure he calls you. What can I do here? What can I do there? These are just nice people, and I give them the best with what they do.
Exactly. So we reviewed why you should start your show, how you should start your show, how to grow. If you want, put some comments below. Feel free to give your opinion on what makes a good show. Give your opinion on some of the mistakes you made. Either Jeff and I made them, whoever. And then more importantly, subscribe to the channel. Jeff, before we conclude, why don't you give your show a quick plug?
Yeah, you could check out my show on YouTube, The Sit Down. Just search it. You'll find it. We just talk about mafia history, a couple videos a week. Very simple, easy enough. Tom, great stuff as always, man. Really killing it with the interviews. I enjoy chatting with you. I'm glad you're feeling better. And, I'm sure we'll continue to learn things every day about YouTube. It's always changing. But thanks for having me.
Absolutely. 125 million viewers per day on YouTube. We're just looking to get our share. Thanks again, Jeff.